Solway.
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 Solway, and welcome to eTogaTrek. I'm Magister Jefferson, and today we're going to take a journey back in time all the way to ancient Rome. I hope that you're ready, because we've got some exciting things in store for you today. So, we've been learning a little bit of Latin, and we can speak just like the ancient Romans did 2,000 years ago. After I greet you by saying Solway, I might then tell you Ego habito in Colorado. Ubi tu habitas. What do you think I'm talking about? If you thought I told you where I live, then you'd be right. I'll ask you Ubi tu habitas, and you can respond Ego habito in, then say the name of your state or your hometown. Let's go ahead and try it now. Ego habito in Colorado. Ubi tu habitas. Wonderful! You're doing great. Before we start our journey today, let's make sure that we have all the supplies that we'll need. First, an eTogaTrek journal. Find a small notebook to use and make it your eTogaTrek journal because you'll need it a few times today. An empty cereal box. You can eat the cereal first. Scissors, tape or glue, some markers, some cotton balls, some toothpicks, stickers, a few sheets of construction paper, some pipe cleaners, and some straws. Now we're ready to meet our instructor for today, Magister Murphy. Solway, Magister Murphy.
Solway, Magister Jefferson.
Ego habito in Colorado. Ubi tu habitas, Magister Murphy.
Ego habito in Virginia.
Mihi placet. Virginia is a wonderful place.
Gratias tibi ago, Magister Jefferson. Welcome to eTogaTrek. My name is Magister Murphy. Today, we will be talking about architecture and buildings in ancient Greece and Rome. Before we begin looking at examples of their architecture, let's think about what we already know. It's time for some brainstorming, so get out your eTogaTrek journal. What do you think buildings looked like in ancient Greece and Rome? Take 1 minute to write down your thoughts in your eTogaTrek journal. You might even want to draw a picture. Pause the video now to write your ideas or draw a quick picture. Those were some great ideas to get our thoughts going about architecture in ancient Greece and Rome. Now, we are going to take a quick look at pictures of a few different ancient buildings. And today, we are going to focus mostly on temples. Think about what you see. You're going to write down some ideas in your eTogaTrek journal in just a minute. We will start by looking at two temples from ancient Greece. The first temple we're going to look at is the Parthenon in Athens. The Parthenon was built to honor Athena, since she was the patron goddess of Athens. It is located on a hill, so no matter where you are in the city, you can see the Parthenon. Some parts of the temple have been lost, but you can use your imagination to think about what the whole temple might have looked like. Here is another Greek temple in Athens, the Temple of Zeus. Since Zeus was king of the gods, the Athenians built this temple to honor him and make him happy. Again, many parts of the temple are missing, but you can tell a little bit about what it might have looked like. Now, we will look at two temples from ancient Rome. This temple is the Pantheon, which is located in Rome, Italy. The Pantheon was originally built to honor all the ancient Roman gods. If you look at the inscription on the front of the temple, you can see the name of the person who built the Pantheon, M. Agrippa, or Marcus Agrippa. The last building that we will see is the Maison Carrée, which is located in modern-day France. Just like the Pantheon, Marcus Agrippa was in charge of building this monument. It was built to honor the Emperor Augustus and two of his adopted sons. Now that you've seen 4 different buildings from ancient Greece and ancient Rome, think about what all these buildings have in common. Using your eTogaTrek journal, Write down a few things you've noticed about buildings and architecture in ancient Greece and Rome. Pause the video now to write down your ideas. Now, let's talk about some things that you might have noticed. For example, in the Maison Carrée, there are stairs leading up to the temple. Temples were often raised above the ground, so you had to look way up to see the temple. You might also notice that these buildings have many columns on their front portico, and some have them all the way around. There are three main types of capitals on these columns. The first type is the Doric capital, which is very simple and includes a few ridges around the top of the column. The second type is the Ionic capital, which has two scrolls, one on each side of the column. The third and most complex type of capital is the Corinthian capital, which has many leaves and flowers that sprout from the top of the column. Just above the columns is a thick band that circles all the way around all four sides of the building. This is called the frieze, and inside of it you might have seen beautiful shapes or sculptures that told stories from mythology. One more thing that you might have noticed is the triangular portion just above the frieze. This triangular section was called the pediment. The pediment was often decorated with more sculptures. For example, the Parthenon used to have sculptures in its pediment that told stories about Athena. Those are the most common elements of buildings and architecture in ancient Greece and Rome. Let's finish by taking a look at this model of the Temple of Aegina. Can you spot the stairs, columns, frieze, and pediment that we just talked about? Here are the stairs leading up to the temple. Then there are columns supporting the roof. Do you notice how they're very simple, with ridges around the edges? These are Doric columns. Then the frieze you can see just above the columns, going around all four sides. And finally, the pediment is the triangular area above the frieze, with many sculptures inside of it. Now that you know all about how the ancient Greeks and Romans built their temples, you're going to have a chance to explore some more ancient buildings. You're going to see a slideshow from the Huffington Post travel section of 18 amazing Greek and Roman temples. Once you scroll down the page a little bit, click through the slides of each temple. As you explore, see if you can find the columns, frieze, and pediment for these temples. Pause the video and click the link in the red box below this video. As you were looking through that slideshow, here are a few things that you might have seen. In the Temple of Augustus and Livia, you can see steps leading up to the temple, columns all the way around, and a frieze on top of the columns, and a triangular pediment on top. At the Garni Temple in Armenia, you can see the tall base lifting the columns high above the ground. This temple also has a great example of Ionic capitals on top of the columns. For the Erechtheum in Athens, you might see that the builder was a little bit more creative. Instead of using columns, he used statues to hold up the roof. These statues are called caryatids, and above those caryatids is a large frieze. The Doric temple of Segesta is pretty well preserved. You can see the columns, the frieze, and the pediment. Notice how there was a pediment on each side of the temple, and imagine where there would have been a roof connecting the two pediments. If you look closely, you can see the simple Doric capitals on top of the columns. Lastly, you might like the Temple of Vesta in Rome. This one was a circular building, and the columns would have gone all the way around the temple, with a frieze on top. You can see the Corinthian capitals again on top of the columns. As you can see, the columns, frieze, and pediment were all very common features for temples in ancient Rome and Greece. But sometimes the architects would make slight variations in the standard plan for building a temple. Today, you visited many temples and other buildings from the ancient Greeks and Romans, but we still design many modern buildings today that use the same style as the ancient Greek and Roman buildings. For example, Washington, D.C. has many buildings that feature elements of classical architecture. In just a minute, you're going to visit Wikipedia to see a list of some of these buildings. You're going to scroll down the page, and here you will find several buildings with neoclassical architecture. We're going to take a look at the Rayburn House office building. Click on the link to bring up the page for the Rayburn House office building, where you can see a picture off to the right. Let's see how this building is similar to the ones we've seen from ancient Greece and ancient Rome. For example, it's built very high off the ground. You can see the ground level where the entrances would be. Then, a little bit above that, sit the bases of where the columns are. There's also a frieze that wraps all the way around the building. Then above the frieze in the front entrance is the pediment. Now this building shows yet another variation on the style of classical architecture. It has wings on the left and right side of the majestic front entrance, which was the main part of this building inspired by ancient Greece and ancient Rome. Now it's your turn to visit Wikipedia and see the list of buildings in Washington, D.C. that are inspired by classical architecture. How many elements of Greek and Roman architecture can you find? Pause the video and click the link in the purple box to visit the page. Now it's time for you to become an architect and design your own Greek or Roman temple at home. Your task is to use the materials in front of you to create a temple. This is a great chance for you to be creative, but here are some tips. Think about the major elements of architecture that we discussed. See if you can create columns to support the roof, and create your triangular pediment with the roof on top of it. You might also want to make a little statue of your favorite Greek god or goddess to feature inside your temple. Again, this is a chance for you to be creative. Use as many of these materials as you possibly can in order to create a Greek or Roman temple. Don't forget to come back to this video when you're done. We'll tell you about how you can enter your temple into a contest for some cool prizes. Bonum fortunam and good luck. Pause the video now to create your own Greek or Roman temple. Today, we visited many temples built by ancient Greeks and Romans. Here is what we saw. Temples are often built high above the ground with steps leading up to them. Columns were used to support the roof. We saw Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian capitals on these columns. The frieze wraps around the entire temple above the columns, and often has sculptures that tell a story. The pediment is a large triangular area on the front and back of the temple that also has beautiful sculptures. Here are a few questions for you to think about. What is your favorite part of ancient temples? How would it feel to stand next to one of those temples? And today we visited Washington, D.C. But that's not the only place where there is architecture inspired by ancient Greece and Rome. Where have you seen this type of architecture where you live? Thanks for joining me today on our trip to Rome and Greece to explore ancient architecture. I hope you have enjoyed our journey, and don't forget to look out for classical architecture in your hometown.
Did you know that the Roman Empire extended from Great Britain to Egypt to Syria? That's more than 9 Texases.
Salve again. I'm glad that you joined us today for our trek back in time to ancient Rome. I can't wait to see your creativity in building those temples. Now, you can take a picture of your own Greek or Roman temple for our contest. To enter the contest, click the link in the blue box below and upload your picture. If you're still curious about Greek or Roman architecture, you can send your questions to us on that page. We would love to hear all of your thoughts and interesting ideas. We'll read your questions and post some answers to them right here. That's all we have for today. Thanks for joining us. Now it's time for us to say Wale, and we'll see you again soon.
Wale.
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 Wale.